Meta is currently preparing to spend up to $145 billion in a single year. They are spending it on data centers, AI researchers, and enough computing power to apparently consume the electricity of small countries. So naturally, after all this investment, Meta recently showed us one of the incredible things this technology can do. You can make weird AI pictures of people on Instagram, including people who did not specifically ask you to make weird AI pictures of them. And strangely enough, people had some concerns.
No, God!
The tool is called Muse Image. It was developed by Meta's Superintelligence Labs, which is possibly the most ambitious name you can give a department. You cannot call yourself the Superintelligence Labs and then give a bad quarter. The pressure is enormous. Anyway, Muse Image is Meta's new image generation model. And the basic product is fairly normal. You type something, AI makes a picture. We have all seen this before. Make me a dog on the moon. Make Mark Zuckerberg look like a medieval king. Normal AI activities. But Meta added one particularly interesting feature. You could reference public Instagram accounts. So instead of spending 30 minutes trying to explain what somebody looks like, you could basically point Muse Image towards an Instagram account and say, yeah, that person on that account, use their image. And you know what? I understand why Meta thought this was a good idea. Meta owns Instagram. Instagram contains an absolutely ridiculous number of photographs. Meta is building an AI image generator. Someone in the meeting must have clearly gone, hey, wait a minute. What if we just use our existing corpus of billions of users on Instagram to generate images? And everyone got very excited. Because from a product perspective, it makes perfect sense. Unfortunately, from a human perspective, there is a small issue. The users on Instagram are actual people, and people are famously quite sensitive about strangers generating fake photographs of them, especially when they did not actively sign up for the experience. The feature quickly started receiving backlash over privacy and consent. Actors, their talent agencies, and everybody online complained, which is generally a sign that your fun new image feature has a much larger legal conversation. And the biggest problem was the way consent worked. For adults with eligible public accounts, this wasn't simply a feature where you walked in and said, hey, I would love strangers to experiment with my face. The relevant reuse setting would already allow the feature unless you turned it off. And that is a very different sales pitch. It's the difference between asking someone, can I borrow your car? And someone driving away in your car and telling you can give them a call to bring them back. And people noticed very quickly. Muse Image launched on Tuesday. By Friday, Meta was already discontinuing this particular feature. 3 days. That's all it took. There are leftovers in my fridge that have lasted longer than this AI feature. Meta eventually admitted that this feature has quote-unquote missed the mark, which is corporate language for the internet has become extremely angry and somebody has scheduled an emergency meeting. But this is where the story gets much more interesting, because Meta pulling one controversial AI feature isn't really important. Technology companies launch stupid things constantly. Google has an entire graveyard of them. The interesting part is who launched it and how much money are they actually spending. Because while Muse Image was speedrunning an apology, Meta was in the middle of the largest corporate spending sprees in history. For 2026, Meta expects capital expenditure of between $125 and $145 billion. Last year, Meta's capital expenditure was roughly half of the upper end of that number. So Zuckerberg isn't gently increasing the AI budget. He basically walked into a casino, found the AI table, and started moving chips over with both hands. And the strange thing is, Meta might be one of those companies that can actually afford this. Because behind all the metaverse and VR headset jokes, and trust me, I'm going to be making them in future videos, Zuckerberg is slowly transforming his public image into a man who owns several necklaces. Meta has built one of the most efficient money printing machines in human history, with advertising. And now Zuckerberg is using that machine to fund a completely different bet. A bet that Meta absolutely cannot afford to lose. Before we go any further, I would really appreciate if you hit the subscribe button down below. It really helps a lot. Alright, now back to the video. When the current AI boom started, nobody was talking about Meta. There was ChatGPT, Microsoft was putting AI into everything, Google had Gemini, Nvidia was selling the digital equivalent of shovels during a gold rush and making an absolute offensive amount of money, and Meta was there. They had AI. Obviously, Meta had been doing AI research for years, and Llama would eventually become one of the biggest names in OpenAI models. But to a normal person, Meta wasn't really an AI company. Nobody was sitting at home thinking, I wonder what Mark Zuckerberg thinks about large language models. Which was a problem. because Meta is normally very good at noticing when the internet is changing. In fact, historically, Meta has had a very sophisticated strategy for dealing with new technology. First, a new app becomes popular, then teenagers start using it, then Zuckerberg looks at it, and 6 months later, mysteriously, Instagram has the exact same features. Snapchat had stories, Instagram got stories. TikTok exploded, Instagram got reels. Twitter became whatever Twitter became, and Meta launched Threads. This strategy has worked surprisingly well. But generative AI was different. You cannot just add another tab to Instagram called GPT-Red and consider the problem solved. AI requires computing power, an absurd amount of computing power. It requires chips, data centers, networking equipment, electricity, and most expensive of all, AI researchers, who have recently discovered that technology companies will apparently pay anything for them. For 2026, Meta expects to spend between $125 and $145 billion in capital expenditure. Now, capital expenditure doesn't mean Zuckerberg is personally spending $145 billion on ChatGPT Plus subscriptions. This is the physical stuff, the infrastructure, servers, data centers, networking, the giant, boring, extremely expensive machinery required to make AI actually work. And Meta is building a lot of it. In Louisiana, Meta is developing a data center campus so large that the site is measured in square miles. It's called Hyperion because apparently, once your data center becomes sufficiently large, you are legally required to name it after a Greek god. Hyperion is expected to scale to several gigawatts of computing capacity. And then, just this month, Meta announced another enormous AI data center project in Alberta, Canada. The investment is expected to be around 13 billion Canadian dollars. And according to Reuters, once fully developed, the facility could use roughly as much electricity as 800,000 homes. Imagine turning off the lights when you leave a room for your entire life, only for Mark Zuckerberg to generate a slightly better picture of a shrimp wearing cowboy boots. Thank you for your sacrifice. And Meta is not just buying infrastructure. It's been aggressively chasing AI talent. Meta has spent heavily building out its AI teams and reorganizing around its superintelligence ambitions. And when you put all this together, the data centers, the chip, the power, the researchers, the $145 billion capex budget, you start to realize that this isn't Meta adding AI to Instagram. Meta is physically rebuilding the company around AI. And this is where I become slightly confused, because we have just spent the last few minutes talking about Meta launching an AI image feature that lasted approximately one long weekend. The company is preparing to spend up to $145 billion in a year. Its first big image model launches, people get angry, that feature disappears in 3 days, and Meta's response is not maybe we should slow down. It's basically, let's build another data center, which raises the fairly obvious question. How do you make this money back? Because $145 billion isn't normal technology spending. It's more than Meta spent on capital expenditure just a couple of years ago by an almost comical margin. And AI companies have already discovered a slightly awkward problem. AI is extremely expensive. The chips, the electricity, training models, all these things are really expensive to run, and users have developed the unfortunate expectation that much of this should be free. So Meta needs a plan. Maybe Meta AI becomes a subscription. Maybe the smart glasses become enormous. Maybe business pay for Meta's AI agents. There are options. But if you're looking at Meta and wondering how a social media company can justify one of the largest AI infrastructure spending sprees on earth, you are looking at the wrong part of the company. Because while everyone has been watching ChatGPT and Gemini, Meta's old business has quietly become absolutely ridiculous. And this year, it might do something that it hasn't done in more than a decade. It might overtake Google. Not in search, obviously. If you start Googling things on Facebook, something has definitely gone terribly wrong. I'm talking about digital advertising. According to projections from eMarketer, Meta is expected to generate around $243 billion in net digital advertising revenue this year. Google, around $240 billion, which means Meta could actually become the largest digital advertising company in the world. And this is genuinely a pretty remarkable shift, because Google has basically been sitting on top of digital advertising for more than a decade. They built one of the greatest businesses in history around a very simple human behavior. You want something and you Google it. Google shows you an ad for it. Very convenient and very profitable. Meta has a slightly different system. You don't know you want something. You open Instagram, and 45 minutes later, you are considering buying a Japanese kitchen knife, magnesium supplements, and a small portable sauna. Meta doesn't wait for you to search. Meta watches what you look at, what you click, what you watch, what you skip, what you almost skip, what you watch for just 14 seconds, and then share it with your friends. And all of those tiny signals help Meta answer one incredibly valuable question. What advertisement are you most likely to respond to? That question has built Meta an absolutely enormous business, and increasingly, AI is helping answer it. Now, when people hear Meta is spending billions on AI, they immediately think of Meta AI, the chatbot, the blue circle sitting in WhatsApp that you keep accidentally pressing, news image, smart glasses, all the obvious AI products. But some of Meta's most valuable AI isn't something you consciously use at all. It's behind the screen. Meta uses machine learning and AI systems to decide what content appears in your feed, which reels you watch, which advertisements you are shown, and increasingly to help advertisers actually create and optimize those advertisements. And this is where the economics of Meta's AI spending start making slightly more sense. Imagine you are a small company selling, luxury socks. Before, you might need someone to photograph the socks, someone to write the advertisement, someone to create 5 different versions, someone to decide which audience sees which version. And after all of that, you discover nobody wants luxury socks. Terrible business. But Meta wants you to use AI to remove more and more of that friction. You give Meta the product, the budget, the basic objective, and increasingly its systems can help generate creative variations, adjust campaigns, and find the people most likely to buy your unnecessarily expensive socks. And Meta has been pushing further in this direction. Zuckerberg has openly talked about a future where a business could efficiently tell Meta what it wants to achieve, connect its bank account, and let Meta's AI handle much of the advertisement process, which is an absolutely insane sales pitch to the businesses advertising on Meta's platforms. Be it Instagram, WhatsApp, or Facebook, give us your money and the algorithm will take it from here. For Meta, this could be enormous because there are millions of businesses that don't have advertising teams. They don't understand targeting. They don't know how to make 20 versions of a video ad. They don't want to spend 3 hours staring at ad managers, wondering what attribution window means. They just want customers. And if Meta can make advertisement as simple as, here's my product, I have $500, find people with poor financial discipline, that opens the advertising machine to even more businesses. And this is the important difference between Meta and a company like OpenAI. OpenAI needs AI to be the product. You use ChatGPT. Maybe you pay for ChatGPT. Businesses may pay for its APIs. AI is the thing being sold. Meta doesn't necessarily need to do that. Meta doesn't need 3 billion people to suddenly start paying $20 a month for Meta's AI. Although I'm sure someone in the finance team of Meta has already made that spreadsheet, Meta can make billions from AI without you ever intentionally using an AI product. If AI makes advertisements perform slightly better, Meta wins. If AI helps advertisers create more campaigns, Meta wins. If the system becomes slightly better at showing you an advertisement at the exact moment your self-control is weakest, Meta wins. Meta doesn't need to sell you AI. Meta needs AI to sell you literally everything else. And suddenly, that $145 billion spending plan looks a little different. Because Meta isn't taking a completely new business and hoping AI somehow makes money. It's attaching AI to an advertising machine that is already generating hundreds of billions of dollars. A machine that might be bigger than Google's. And if AI makes that machine even a few percent better, a few percent of an absolutely ridiculous number is still an absolutely ridiculous number. But Meta also have a much bigger problem than simply convincing people AI is the future. Because while I was finishing this video, Meta reported its earnings. And let's just say investors were not exactly celebrating. The company reiterated that it is prepared to spend between $130 and $145 billion on AI infrastructure this year alone. Data centers, chips, networking equipment, researchers, the spending hasn't slowed down at all. The problem is that the returns haven't showed up nearly as fast. Meta's free cash flow collapsed by more than 90%, falling from roughly $8.5 billion a year ago to under $800 million. Revenues still grew, but costs exploded even faster. Profits fell, and Wall Street immediately started asking the obvious question: when does all of this actually start paying itself? The market's answer, at least for now, wasn't particularly optimistic. Meta shares dropped by around 9% after the results, wiping well over $100 billion off of company's market value in a matter of hours. And honestly, that's not entirely surprising. It's one thing to tell investors you are building the future. It's another thing to ask them to watch almost all of your cash disappear while you do it. This is the uncomfortable phase of every massive technological investment. The spending arrives immediately, the payoff arrives maybe years later, or maybe it never arrives at all. Right now, nobody actually knows which outcome Meta is heading towards. Zuckerberg is effectively asking investors to believe that if Meta spends enough money today, eventually they will own the infrastructure behind next computing platform. AI assistants, business agents, smart glasses, enterprise tools, maybe even selling computer power directly to other AI companies. It's an incredibly ambitious vision. The problem is that visions don't appear on quarterly earning reports. Cash flow does. And until those new businesses begin generating real money, every quarter like this is going to invite the exact same question. Will they ever be able to pay this off? Personally, I don't think one disappointing quarter suddenly invalidates the entire strategy. Building infrastructure on this scale was never going to produce instant results, but it does mean the margin for error just became way smaller. The longer Meta spends tens of billions without obvious new revenue streams emerging, the harder it becomes to convince investors that this isn't just the most expensive experiment Silicon Valley has ever funded. Anyway, those were my thoughts on why Meta wants to casually set $145 billion on fire in 2026. The plan is insane. There's really no way getting around that. But the foundations underneath might not be quite as shaky as they first appear. If you enjoyed the video, hit the subscribe button for more deep dives into economics, business, and politics. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.